guys, if you're new to Deception Bytes, hit the like and subscribe button and be sure to hit the bell to be notified of future videos. If you wish to support the channel, the links are in the description below. Now, fasten your seatbelt. Here we go. All right, guys, I'm back, and I see you are too, and I'm glad for that. It is 9:36 p.m. Eastern Time, and it is July 20th, Saturday. Now, I know I'm getting a late start again, and I promise I'm going to start knocking it back a little bit each day so that I can get myself on schedule again. I was doing well, I was getting it out early, and now I'm getting progressively later again. So anyway, and I won't make excuses, even though I have a really good one. Well, I do. It was time to clean out my storage closet, and it had gotten so bad. Now, I am impeccably clean, like fastidiously clean, and everything has its place. Nothing's out of place. I'm very, very clean. But if you open the closet, it's like one of these deals that you open it and then you have to stand back because something's going to fall out and hit you. So I had to take everything out of that closet, and it took me all day. And then I had to go and work out, which I really didn't need to work out after that. But, you know, it won't hurt anything. Might. Anyway, that's not why you came. I know. So we don't have any Q posts today, although I should have checked because he could have posted while I was out. Now, let me just go and take a look so that I will know for sure and can tell you definitively, because I know you want to know. You do. No, we are caught up with Q. So we are going to get into Q-related news. That's what we're going to do. And there's lots of that. Lots and lots. Probably more than I can get to tonight. But let's get started. All right. Now, this I've been saving for a few days. Some of this stuff, you know, there's just so much news every day, I can't get to it all. But this is very interesting. Dismissal and investigation by RCMP of Winnipeg, co-inventor of Ebola drug, stuns colleagues. Very, very interesting. Heinz Feldman has known and worked with, now I'm not sure how to pronounce this lady's name. She is Chinese, obviously. But anyway, I can't even. For years, and to this day, she says he has nothing but respect for his fellow microbiologists. Well, if they're not killing them, they're firing them. Now, there was a whole slew of microbiologists that died under very suspicious circumstances, and I have those articles somewhere. Anyway, indeed, this lady that had invented this Ebola drug won global accolades for her part in developing an experimental new drug for treating Ebola virus, most of the inquiry done at her high security lab in Winnipeg. So Feldman said he was taken aback Monday to see a media report that the scientist and her entire research team, all from China, had been escorted out of the federal government's National Microbiology Laboratory, NML, last week and reported to the RCMP. I still hope this is a big misunderstanding, said the former head of the lab's special pathogens program, where I'm just going to call her Q, even though QI, that's what I'm going to call her. This is her last name right here. So where she worked, she is a great researcher. She has been a great collaborator. She has been a great interactor in the field. I can't say anything bad about her. Feldman, now chief of the U.S. National Institutes of Health Laboratory of Virology in Montana, stressed that he had no personal knowledge of the reported events. And CBC TV said that QIU, as well as husband and NML scientist Kading Cheng and her students, had been forcibly dispatched from the facility on July 5th. I told you I was a little late in getting this to you. A fact the National Post could not independently confirm. Eric Morissette, a spokesman for the Public Health Agency of Canada, would not comment on whether she had been dismissed, citing privacy concerns. But he said that the agency is looking into an administrative matter and advised the RCMP on May 24th of possible policy breaches at the lab. The organization is taking steps to resolve it expeditiously, said Morissette in a statement. There is no employee from the NML under arrest or confined to their home. He also said the public is not at risk and that the work of the lab continues. It's a little odd, don't you think? Seeing as, you know, the whole Ebola outbreak thing, I just think it's odd. Now, an RCMP spokesman confirmed to Reuters news agency it had received a referral from the agency but refused to comment on its investigation. A University of Manitoba spokesman told Reuters that QIU's non-paying adjunct professorship had been suspended pending an RCMP investigation. With the government releasing so few details, it is unclear what might be behind the unusual episode. Well, I'll tell you one thing. Canada is a lot different from the U.S. in this matter because nothing gets leaked to the news here. And something like this can happen and you barely hear a peep. Whereas in the United States, there's always things leaked to the press, always. And there's always some way that you can get the information, not here. Anyway, indicted McGill professor was caught in broad controversial U.S. dragnet of Chinese background scientists. Spy agency bluntly warns Canada remains a target of cyber theft and espionage from Russia and China. From Ebola to Zika, the Winnipeg Virology Lab solving all the world's disease problems lately. But in the United States, at least security agencies have recently put a magnifying glass on researchers and students with ties to China amid fears that Beijing is overseeing widespread theft of intellectual property and trade secrets. A number of scientists south of the border and one now retired professor at McGill University have been charged under a controversial new China initiative of the U.S. Justice Department, which critics call a racially biased witch hunt. That's right. Yes, it's all racially biased. That's right. Okay, you keep that story. The Ebola drug, partly discovered by QIU, is being developed by a California company, and 3 potential competing medicines are also in the works. But Feldman said he doubts that treatments for an illness that afflicts relatively few people with little pharmaceutical buying power would be the subject of economic espionage. Oh, you think not? You think not? Because it's a treatment for something that afflicts relatively few? Well, hang on, because there's more coming. There's more infections coming. Sure there is. It's out of control. The WHO has even said that. It's a global emergency. Anyway, to make money off these rare diseases, there would be better things to do if you really wanted to make money, he said. Regardless, there are few more high-profile figures than still at the microbiology lab, whose level 4 unit is one of a small number worldwide that work with the world's most dangerous pathogens, including Ebola and other hemorrhagic fevers. Yeah, something's not right here, really. QIU worked with Gary Kobinger, who succeeded Feldman as head of the special pathogens, but has since left the lab himself on so-called monoclonal antibody treatments for Ebola, their findings coming to the fore internationally when the lethal virus swept through West Africa in 2014 and 2015. Their discoveries make up 2 of the 3 elements in the drug ZMapp, which has promising results in limited trials and case-by-case in compassionate use, but has yet to receive regulatory approval. According to a 2014 conference, biology, QIU obtained her medical degree in 1985 from Hebei Medical University and her master's degree in immunology in 1990 at Tianjin Medical University, both in China. She moved to Houston, Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center in 1996 as a visiting scientist, then moved to Cancer Care, Manitoba the next year as a research associate. In In 2003, says the biography, she joined the NML's Special Pathogen Program. So a little bit strange that she was escorted out by the RCMP, don't you think? I haven't heard a peep more about this. Probably because it happened in Canada. If it didn't happen in Canada, this would be all over the news. Well, maybe not, because the mainstream media. Well, it would be all over the alt-right news, the alt media. Absolutely it would, but not in Canada. All right, let's go back now. I just thought that was a little bit of a mystery there. It's a lot of a mystery. And a lot of these things I take in and I just put it to the back of my mind, and then something happens and I go, oh yeah, I remember when, you know, and I just have a feeling this is going to be one of those things. So keep it in the back of your mind, because there's more to that than meets the eye, or ear, or nose, or mouth. Whole Foods sponsors Drag Queen Story Hour to indoctrinate children with perversion, pedophilia, and transgenderism. Whole Foods. Yeah. Now, when I was in the States, and I'm not aware of Whole Foods here. If it is here, it's definitely not in my area. But I used to shop at Whole Foods all the time in the States, and I loved it. So I was a little bit disappointed to see this, that they are now promoting this. The sick, twisted agenda of the deranged left has come full circle today, as Whole Foods is now sponsoring a Drag Queen Story Hour event to indoctrinate children into pedophilia, transgenderism, and perversion. A retailer that once promoted organics and clean food is now saturated in absolute filth, exploiting America's children to be groomed for the pedophiles and perverts that are repeatedly linked to drag queen events in multiple cities across America. Not to be forgotten, Whole Foods also completely reversed its 2013 promise to label the GMO status of everything it sells by the end of 2018. Excuse me. One moment, please. That was delicious. All right. As Natural News revealed, the promise was a 5-year deliberate lie by the dishonest Whole Foods Market Corporation, which continues to sell contaminated products and GMO canola oil to its customers. Now, that is not anything that I knew. I would not have believed that they sold any GMO products. And I did hear that they were going to label the GMO status of their products, but I was not aware that they had not done that. So interesting. Not only are Whole Foods products offering filthy, from a food science point of view, its cultural indoctrination programs are rooted in filth and child grooming that prepares children to be sexually molested by adult perverts dressed as women. Drag Queen Story Hour is a front for the pedophilia wing of the extreme transgender pervert community, which exploits young children for the sexual gratification of sicko adults, many of whom have been found to have criminal histories of sex abuse and child exploitation. Yeah. So, according to the records uncovered by Mass Resistance, William Travis Dees, the drag queen in question, is a current member of the Space City Sisters drag queen group. He also repeatedly volunteered as a greeter for young children at various DQSH events, as well as assumed other roles at these events that allowed him close access to underage children. As it turns out, Dees has a rap sheet of heinous sex crimes that he committed against children as young as 4 that dates back to as far as 2004. It was at the same time, it was that same year, in fact, that Dees was convicted and jailed for committing sex crimes against not just 1, but 4 different prepubescent children, ranging in age from 4 to 8. All right, Dees also reportedly used different aliases for his various drag characters and personas, constantly shifting and altering who he was like a chameleon. The pervert pedophilia event has been endorsed by Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, who is obviously virtue signaling her support for transgenderism and pedophilia in order to appease the social justice perverts on the left. Here's her tweet proudly announcing the event and thanking Whole Foods for supporting it. We want to thank our friends at HTL Hawks, Atlanta Falcons, Whole Foods, GA Beverage, and Atlanta Pride for partnering with us for Drag Queen Story Hour. Thank you for your commitment to a welcoming, diverse, and inclusive Atlanta. Alrighty. And okay, drag queens are pedophile disguises. As a reader commented on this information liberation story covering the fiasco, no normal people take their children to library to have fat old men dressed as clown women read them stories. Those parents are homosexuals who adopted or hired surrogates so they could abuse their minds and bodies. Now, I don't know about that. I don't know. That seems to be going a little bit far if you ask me, but who knows? Just like the lesbians that chopped off their boy's male part so they could make him another drag queen. Soon, they'll insist it's right to have sex with children. Watch, you know it's coming. And Whole Foods, I'm done with you. Go to hell. FYI, that is not my sentiment. FYI, in case you don't see it, drag queens are pedophile disguises. Now, I think that's taking it a little bit far. I don't agree with drag queen story hour in any shape or form. I think that it is perversion, and I think that it is indoctrinating young children. Not only that, but it brings young, vulnerable women, or young, vulnerable children into the presence of middle-aged men who may not have their best intentions in mind, if you know what I mean, and I'm sure you do. So, yeah, these are user comments, and it says if you shop at Whole Foods, you are supporting pedophilia and child exploitation. It's an inescapable conclusion. If you shop at Whole Foods, you are supporting pedophilia and child exploitation. That's what the corporation apparently supports and endorses. If you want your children to be drooled over by a fat slob pedo man dressed as a woman, then keep buying overpriced GMO canola oil at Whole Foods. Now, again, they do obviously support this agenda. There's no denying that. But is that how everyone at Whole Foods feels? I don't know. Obviously, those in charge made that decision. It says rampant child abuse and sexual exploitation has now been normalized by progressives on the left. That is absolutely true. Who claim they are doing this for love. They claim sex with children is loving and normal, and that if you oppose it, you are full of hatred and intolerance. Pedophilia, according to the deranged left, is now diversity and inclusiveness, and you've got powerful corporations, mayors, and politicians all supporting it. That is true. Whole Foods will probably start holding a drag queen story hour events in their own stores soon, turning Whole Foods market locations into pedophilia indoctrination hubs where children are groomed to be shared among the loving community of pedos, which declares love knows no age difference. Well, you know, I think that's taking it a bit far. I think this is a little bit overreactionary. Now, granted, I don't agree with this in any shape or form at all, not by any stretch of the imagination, and I would have a difficult time supporting a store which made that their, if that is how they feel and that is what they support, then I would have a very hard time supporting them, and that's just the truth. There are lots of places where you can get Whole Foods, including farmers markets, which are the best place because you are supporting local farmers. So, I mean, I used to shop at Whole Foods when I lived in the cities because, you know, that was the only place to get fresh food. Well, it wasn't the only place, but it was a place. And, you know, here, since I'm here, you know, there's just a lot of, it's an agricultural area, so there's a lot of farming, and I can get my produce fresh, I can get my eggs fresh, I can get my milk fresh, everything. So anyway, let's go on, shall we? Of course we shall. All right, now let's look at this, shall we? You'd wonder, I guess we have nothing else going on in the world but things like this. I don't know why this always comes up. Prayers go out to Oprah Winfrey. Yeah, it's over. Yeah, it's over, all right. Because she's, isn't she in the, I think she is on the Lolita Express. I think so. I'm going to have to check that out. But her name has come up in association with all that. All right. 23-year-old recent grad and councilman pushes Berkeley to banish gender-specific words like manhole. I don't know. Come on, everybody. Come on, come on. Can you join me now? Let's do a collective eye roll. You do feel better, right? I know, right? Okay. This is so stupid. This is so ridiculous. It's ridiculous. 23-year-old Berkeley graduate and freshman councilman Regal Robinson pushed the city of Berkeley to banish gender-specific words like manhole and manpower. The council voted unanimously. The council unanimously voted to approve the new policy. How did America ever survive without the far left speech police? I'd like to know that myself, because it's gotten absolutely ridiculous. It is so stupid. Mankind, I mean, you know, that word has been in use like forever. Now all of a sudden, oh, no, you can't say that. Don't say manhole. Anyway, here is the asshat in a recent video. Regal stands against the hate. He'll be governor someday. Bay Area stands united against hate. Should we play it, people? Why not?
My name is Rigel Robinson. I'm a recent graduate of UC Berkeley. I live in Berkeley, and we stand united against hate. I remember watching as a stranger told my mom in front of me to go back to where she came from. I didn't know that person, their opinion didn't matter to me, but their words have stuck with me forever. We need to stand against hate, because no one should live in fear. We need more people to get involved at every level, to connect with each other, perhaps most importantly to connect with our friends who don't agree with us, and to have the conversations that we don't want to have. It's so important that you get involved with the Week of Action, November 11th to November 18th. Let's stand united against hate.
Okay, well, his eyes creep me out a bit because he stares without moving his eyes around, and I don't like that. It's not normal. So, Berkeley, California has adopted an ordinance to replace some terms with gender-neutral words in the city code. The San Francisco Chronicle reports Wednesday that she and he will be replaced by they. The word manpower and manhole will soon become workforce and maintenance hole. All right. I've got one of those. Yeah, I take the trash out with it, you know. You know what I mean. You know, every now and then you have to have a sit down. So, yeah, maintenance hole. That's my new term. I'm going to start calling people maintenance holes. You are such a maintenance hole. Anyway, the City Council on Tuesday unanimously passed the measure to replace more than 24 commonly used terms. There will be no more craftsmen in city code, only craftspeople or artisans. Berkeley has a long history of leading on politically and socially liberal issues. The sponsor of the ordinance is Councilman Rigel Robinson, a 23-year-old recent graduate of the University of California, Berkeley. He says his time in college expanded his awareness of gender issues. Oh, I bet it did. Well, there you go. Maintenance hole. That's the word of the day, people. Maintenance hole. Can you say it together? Maintenance hole. All right. Feel better now. No, actually I don't. Let's go back here. Look at this. Okay, you're going to think because of these stories at the first that it's a slow news day, and you'd be right. But I really do have some gobsmacking stuff. Really. I'm just, you know, I don't know, I'm just enjoying going through these. So, you know, indulge me, please. Ready for grasshopper juice? Sure. These bugs pack 5 times more antioxidants than fresh squeezed orange juice. I'm going to go out and collect me some. Yes, I am. I'm going to put it in my my bullet and squish them all up and just drink them. Yeah, no, I'm not. No, I'm not doing that at all. New research finds grasshoppers, silkworms, crickets, and giant cicadas could be the new superfoods. Well, orange juice, kale, acai berries, and bugs. Turns out edible insects like grasshoppers, crickets, and silkworms are rich sources of antioxidants. Yum! Packing 5 times more antioxidants than fresh orange juice, according to a new study published in Frontiers in Nutrition. Though a quarter of the world's population, or about 2 billion people, regularly eat insects, many Americans remain squeamish about swallowing bugs. The author of the study says its findings could be one way to entice health-conscious consumers to bite. In other words, by billing these creatures, Its findings could be one way to entice health-conscious consumers to bite. In other words, by billing these critters as 6-legged superfoods. Superfoods. Crickets. Yum. Edible insects are an excellent source of protein, polyunsaturated fatty acids, minerals, vitamins, and fiber. They're also a good source of insects. But until now, nobody had compared them with classical functional foods such as olive oil or orange juice in terms of antioxidant activity, wrote University of Teramo, Italy professor Mauro Serfani in his report on the study. Insects have not been a part of mainstream American cuisine, but tastes could be changing. I hope not. No, really, I do. Would I eat insects? If I was absolutely starving to death and let's say my airplane crashed in the Andes and for some reason there was a supply of fresh grasshoppers on board. I don't know. It could happen. Anyway, now if some of my fellow crew members had perished in the flight, in the crash, and I had a choice between eating people and eating grasshoppers, now I'd eat the grasshoppers. I'm just saying. I would. But, you know, since I have the option of all of the other delicious foods here, why on earth would I collect insects and blend them in my blender and drink them? I don't know. Anyway, insects have, and taste could be changing. A recent study found that more than 8 in 10 Americans, 82%, would consider trying edible insects. That's what's wrong with America right there. Right there. That 8 in 10 Americans would eat insects. That's what's wrong with America. You asked me, I'm telling you, that's it. At any rate, and bugs have started crawling onto some U.S. restaurant menus, particularly those serving cuisines in which bugs are more common ingredients. Some bugs can be found at specialty grocers in the form of dried crickets, winged weaver ants, and gourmet worm salt, not to mention as protein powder for shakes and smoothies. Oh, thank you. Eating bugs is good for the environment. Well, yeah. Eating trash is good for the environment. It's not good for you. It's good for the environment. And even your waistline. Okay. Stefani's team tested a range of edible insects and invertebrates commercially available in supermarkets and on websites, removing the wings and stings that can't be consumed. Wings and stings. Maintenance holes. And then grinding the rest of the organism into 2 extracts, the fat and a powder that could be dissolved in water. Both extracts were tested for antioxidant capacity. Tasty. The critters included the aforementioned crickets, grasshoppers, and silkworms, giant cicadas, giant water bugs, and black ants, as well as black tarantulas and black scorpions, which are technically arachnids, not insects, and African caterpillars, mealworms, buffalo worms, palm worms, and scolopendra, large centipedes. I'm salivating. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. The researchers then used the same process to test fresh orange juice and olive oil, which are well-known sources of antioxidants. Antioxidants, often found in fruits and vegetables, are vital for helping to prevent cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and cancer. The result? The water-soluble extracts from the grasshoppers, crickets, and silkworms had 5 times the antioxidant capacity of fresh orange juice. In fact, most of the tested insects and invertebrates had some level of antioxidant capacity higher than the OJ, except for the cicadas, water bugs, tarantulas, and scorpions. Yeah, I'm not partial to eat those anyway. The result of the fat extracts were also promising. The fat from the giant cicadas and silkworms showed twice the antioxidant activity of olive oil. Serfani concluded that certain edible insects like the crickets, grasshoppers, and silkworms are a rich source of antioxidants. In the future, we might also adapt dietary regimens for insect rearing in order to increase their antioxidant content for animal or human consumption, he wrote. Well, there you go. There you go. Yeah, this insect idea might be getting less hard for the general public to swallow. After all, alternative meat patties from Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods have popped up in Whole Foods, Amazon, and Burger King, and even Nestle has announced it will roll out plant-based burgers earlier this year. There you go. I know it's all over up here. I mean, it's everywhere. Some academics have warned the world's growing population may eventually be forced to buy into it. The University of Queensland has said that the livestock industry can't continue to meet the global demand for meat, and the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization has also warned that with the global population expected to hit 9 billion people by 2050, the only way we'll be able to feed everyone is by eating bugs. At any time, it is estimated that there are some 10 quintillion individual insects alive on the planet. Well, there you go. The edible insect market is expected to exceed 165 million by 2023 in the US alone, and some international sites like GMI Insights predicting it to hit more than 523 million globally by 2023. There you go. That's how we can all get rich. We can just start rearing grasshoppers. Yeah. Okay then. Well, it's good to know, like, if you're ever starving to death, that you can go out and hunt grasshoppers. But no, seriously, I mean, if you were absolutely positively starving to death, but even starving to death, I don't think I could eat a tarantula or a giant centipede. I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen. Anyway, well, there you go. I wanted to let you know about this upcoming trend so you could get right in on it. Get your juice. I'd rather drink twice as much orange juice, to tell you the truth, but that's just me. Okay, now let's look at this. No, really, let's. Okay, MSNBC's Chris Hayes, Trump supporters must be confronted and destroyed. How's he get away with that? Would we get away with that? Saying that the left needs to be confronted and destroyed? No, we would not. But he does. Several days later, the liberal media still hasn't moved past President Trump's controversial tweets, but are instead rallying around them in opposition. MSNBC's all-in host, Chris Hayes, took a leading position Thursday night by denouncing all Republicans and Trump supporters and calling for a revolution of sorts against the Trump administration. As with all social justice warriors, Hayes has been circulating his cause all week, building the case for Trump's apparent racism. He began, each part of the coalition has been dealt into the Trump presidency. It is a classic model of corrupt governance. The capo on the top and the and the many, many bosses below who are given control of their domain to do as they wish. This statement, clearly meant to place Trump along the ranks of Hitler and Mussolini, has been a staple MSNBC scare tactic for some time now. Well, it's all they have, right? You know, they don't have real journalism anymore. They're not doing their jobs. They're just getting their, you know, talking points from whoever and, you know, regurgitating them. That's all they're doing. They're not really the news anymore. Journalism is dead, except for the alt media and, you know, some of these little guys. They're the ones that are doing the work, that are out there digging this stuff up. Mainstream news doesn't. They're very, very lazy. They regurgitate everything. They're parrots. That's it. Next, Hayes turned his ire on the American people. But the base, what does the base get? The folks in that arena, well, it's obvious, isn't it? They get to chant. They get to revel in their own Americanness and primacy at the expense of others. Not only is the base at fault for their patriotism and desire to protect their country, we're at fault for our patriotism and desire to protect our country? And since when is that a bad thing? When did that become a bad thing? I guess it is now. To them, anyway. Not to anybody else in America. I mean, there's a few people that go along with that, certainly, but not very many. They realize that no one actually cared. They realized that no one actually cared about deficits or small government. That was never the fuel that fired the engine of Republican politics. It was always roiling rage against them that was on full display in the send her back chants last night for a moment that prides itself on being thinkers and valuing common sense over being guided by feelings. Hayes' sentiments seem unlikely. Nevertheless, Hayes continued to insist on the imminent danger posed by millions of peaceful Americans and implored it must be peacefully, non-violently, politically destroyed with love, compassion, and determination, but utterly confronted and destroyed. Right, that's like somebody's looking at you straight in the eyes and saying, you know what, I'm going to have to kill you, but I'm doing it in love. It's only for your best, very best interest. I'm doing it in love. I'm not angry, but I'm still going to kill you violently. And you will be totally dead. And then I will prance about your grave shouting hallelujah. I'm sorry I have to do this, but it's for your own good. That's what he just said, basically. Okay, nevertheless, Hayes continued to insist on the imminent danger posed by, okay, I just read that. I just decided to read it again, I guess. He continued with the entreaty, not by prying off this or that interest. They are in too deep. They have shamed themselves too much. The heart of the thing must be ripped out. I'm going to rip out your heart. It's okay. It'll only hurt for a minute. You might actually enjoy it. You probably won't. The darkness must be banished. The people who feel moral revulsion at that display we saw last night must collectively mobilize in greater numbers than the chanters. Well, luckily for Hayes, Antifa is already on it, but it's to be determined if he can get them on board with the peacefully violently aspect. Here is the transcript from the July 18th episode of All In. Yeah, I don't know. It says, every day it becomes more evident that the liberal news media are no longer simply a megaphone for liberals in Washington, New York, and Hollywood. The media are now leading the radical left and using their platform to push a socialist agenda. Newsbusters cuts through the leftist propaganda and exposes the media's liberal bias, bringing the truth to the American people. Donate today. Help Newsbusters, blah, 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 blah. So there you go. That is from newsbusters.org. Newsbusters.org. And yes, this guy, you know, Hayes wants to destroy us in love and peacefully, you know, just rip out our hearts. Yeah. I'm from the government, and I'm here to rip out your heart. Well, actually, he's not from the government. He is from the deep state. Chris Hayes, ladies and gentlemen, Chris Hayes. If you see him come to your house, run. because he's not bringing love. Alrighty, let's go back now. No, sorry, we've got to turn away from all this heart ripping, and we've got to look at some of the other news. Like this. Let's look at this. Okay, now we're crossing over into the serious stuff now, okay? Well, not that the other stuff wasn't serious. It was serious. It just wasn't, you know, as serious as this. Now, this is gobsmacking, if ever there was gobsmacking news. Ghislaine Maxwell's father was a dark and mysterious figure, just like Jeffrey Epstein. Well, they say that you're drawn to your father. I don't know if that's true. Ghislaine Maxwell, the most elusive figure in the Jeffrey Epstein menage, grew up in a family of dissemblers. In fact, the family business was built on dissembling. No charges have been filed against 57-year-old Maxwell, but she has been named in civil lawsuits alleging that she acted as a procurer of young women for Epstein. Their relationship has varied over the years, from romantic to a more practical partnership in which she used her social connections to introduce Epstein to some notable figures, including Prince Andrew, the raciest member of Britain's royal family. Well, I don't know about that. Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, was one of the darkest and most mysterious men to appear in British public life. Even his death remains a mystery. In November 1991, he disappeared from the deck of his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, named for his youngest daughter, and it was anchored off the Canary Islands. Like all Maxwell's 9 children, Ghislaine is French by birth. They were all delivered by the gynecologist sister of Maxwell's wife, Betty, at a maternity home in Maisons-Laffitte, a suburb of Paris. And this is him. His naked body was found floating 15 miles away by a fisherman. Pathologists who performed post-mortem examinations disputed the cause of death. 2 said he had fallen from the yacht after suffering a heart attack and drowned. A third said his heart condition had not been responsible, that he had fallen and drowned. Throughout his whole life, Maxwell concealed as much as he revealed. Outwardly, he played the part of a charismatic businessman, but this performance was always based on an increasingly complicated web of companies with links that only he understood. After his death, it emerged that Maxwell Communications Corporation owed money to 43 banks with a total debt of more than $4 billion. Could you imagine being in debt $4 billion? Seen through the eyes of forensic accountants, it seems like the life of a swindler and consummate con man, but the motivation behind it was more a self-created fantasy than greed. This was a pathology that I never got to see myself up close. Interesting. And that's not all about his father. So let's go back here. Well, where did I go there? There we are. Alrighty. Let's look at this. No, really, let's. Well, there we go. All right. And this from The Cut, the socialite on Epstein's arm. And by the way, guess what I found out? You know the picture that I showed you yesterday that had a submarine docking area on the island, on Epstein's island? Well, guess who has a submarine pilot's license? Yeah, Ghislaine. How coincidental is that? Now it makes me think that that sketch was real, for sure, because that is just too weird. Yep, she does. She pilots a submarine. Sure does. Anyway, she was there at the socialites' dues, Cornelia Guest's holiday bash, Georgette Mossbacher's party for the writer Michael gross. A real estate mogul, Abby Rosen's birthday at Bergdorf Goodman's 111th anniversary, at Harvey Weinstein's cocktail for William and Harry behind the palace walls, at film screenings and store openings and fashion shows at Tina Brown's home and Ariana Huffington's home, and the Time 100 Gala and the Alzheimer's Association's Rita Hayworth Gala. For years, though not lately, Ghislaine Maxwell was a constant on the New York social scene in most Upper East iteration. She was a friend of everyone, if an intimate of few. So she was a friend to everyone, and she was intimate with few. I know her socially, growled the furrier, Dennis Basso, who swaths the wealthy and mink. Alone, she's been to my fashion shows, but some hundreds of people come. Alone, that's the party line now, because Maxwell's closest associate, her intimate, her maybe employer, and now the albatross keeping company with the jewelry around her neck, is Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced financier who has been accused of sexually abusing underage girls and is currently awaiting trial at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan on charges of sex trafficking and conspiracy. Oh, I hope there's more charges than that coming down the pipe. And Maxwell seems to know many rich and powerful men. Articles mention her dining with Bill Clinton. Photos show her partying with Elon Musk and deep in conversation with Stephen Schwarzman. But her more durable connection has been with Epstein. She was there at his gargantuan townhouse on East 71st Street, there on his private plane, there with him and Donald Trump and his then girlfriend Melania at Mar-a-Lago. She was, as he put it in a 2003 Vanity Fair profile, his best friend. Maxwell, 57, has been accused in civil suits of serving as his procuress, luring women and girls into Epstein's web. Maxwell has denied these allegations, and has never been criminally charged. Her attorneys did not respond to multiple requests for comment. In court documents, Epstein's accusers allege that Maxwell acted as a recruiter, an instructor, and in some cases a participant in the abuse he practiced. Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who claims that Maxwell recruited her on behalf of Epstein when Giuffre was a 16-year-old spa attendant at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, where Epstein has a home, said much of her grooming came from Maxwell herself. The training starts immediately, she said in a video interview with the Miami Herald. It was everything down to how to give a blowjob, how to be quiet, be subservient, give Jeffrey what he wants. A lot of this training came from Ghislaine herself. Being a woman, it kind of surprises you that a woman could let stuff like that happen. Not only let it happen, but to groom you into doing it. All right, and this is a picture of, this is Melania, then his girlfriend, Melania, and Donald Trump, and Ghislaine, and Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I know people look at these pictures and think that somehow Trump is guilty, but you've got to realize that Trump is in the circles of the ultra rich. So they would have traveled in the same social circles. So yes, they would have known each other. Yes, they probably were friends at some time. I do believe they had a falling out, you know, over the whole Mar-a-Lago thing. After Maxwell disputed Jeffrey's earlier statements to the press and called her a liar, Jeffrey sued her for defamation. The two settled the case, as did Maxwell and Sarah Ransom, another woman who claimed Maxwell groomed her, and many of the filings from these suits are sealed or redacted. Earlier this month, just before Epstein's arrest, the Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit ordered filings from the Roberts case to be unsealed, thanks in part to the efforts by the Herald and other news organizations which Maxwell opposes. The files could be made public in a matter of weeks. The one person most likely in jeopardy is Maxwell, because the records are going to be unsealed, because the records that are going to be unsealed have so much evidence against her. David Boyce, Jeffrey's attorney, told the Herald he suggested she might have an interest in cooperating with the authorities, though she may have missed that opportunity. Those who knew Maxwell only as a friendly face on the social circuit, were wholly aware of this side of her. I have nothing bad to say about her, one former acquaintance said. Nobody knew any of this creepy sex stuff, said another. No one I knew had any idea. Those who knew her in connection with Epstein saw her as nothing more sinister than a social matchmaker. Every pretty girl in New York in those days Ghislaine would invite to Jeffrey, said Ian Relly, an investment banker and social fixture who has known Maxwell for years and who, along with his wife, the author and socialite Lucy Skykes, was a fellow guest at a dinner for Prince Andrew at Epstein's townhouse in the early aughts. Maxwell and Epstein have been attached, but she was now an employee of his, as I understood it, she said. Her job was to jazz up his social life by getting fashionable young women to show up. He presumed the young women to be in their 20s. Was Maxwell an employee of Epstein's? No one seems entirely sure. Their lives were certainly closely entwined. Tabloid reports on her claims that she managed Epstein's properties. Besides the house in New York and Palm Beach, Epstein has homes in New Mexico and Paris and his own private island in the Caribbean. From his office on Madison Avenue, which appeared for so many years as one of Maxwell's addresses in public records, court documents show Epstein's bills are going there too. Epstein, for his part, once said she wasn't on the payroll, yet she did errands for him, hunted for a yoga teacher in California, according to Vanity Fair, or acted as an intermediary when he wanted to give his friend, the billionaire Les Wexner, a family portrait painted by Nelson Shanks, whose previous commissions included Bill Clinton, Prince Charles, and Princess Diana, and Pope John Paul II. Shanks sued Maxwell, Epstein, and the Wexners when Epstein refused to pay for the finished painting. The case settled out of court. Wexner has said that he cut ties with Epstein more than 10 years ago. Shanks died in 2015. Maybe these were simply the favors of a devoted friend. When Maxwell donated to Hillary Clinton's presidential primary campaign in 2007, 2,300, the maximum individual contribution allowed at that time, she listed herself as unemployed. When she gave to Gary King's congressional bid in New Mexico a few years before that, furnishing an address in St. Thomas associated with Epstein, she was retired. Epstein and several associates also donated to King's various races, including his runs for governor and his successful campaign for attorney general. King has twice had to return money, either from Epstein or from companies related to him. Epstein bought his ranch in New Mexico from the family of King's father, the state's former governor, and Epstein, who was required to register as a sex offender as part of a 2008 plea agreement with federal prosecutors, managed not to do so in New Mexico. Well, he didn't anywhere. So New Mexico's not special in that regard. One moment. And in the social world, questions of profession are secondary anyway. Half of my friends, I don't even know what they do, said one social regular who knew Maxwell casually. It's just not done to even ask those things. And why would you, when Maxwell was great company, as one longtime power broker called her, an addition to any table, said another. If there was one word, it was charming, said Patrick McMullen, the society photographer. Vicky Ward, who wrote the Vanity Fair profile of Epstein and who has said publicly that her reporting about Epstein's abuse of two young girls was removed from it, returned to the subject of Epstein and Maxwell in a short separate article. Full disclosure, I like her, she wrote. Most people in New York do. It's almost impossible not to. She was said to be wickedly funny and unusually knowledgeable, glamorous, and on top of all that, British. I think New Yorkers are charmed by that high-end English accent, McMullen said. She could toss off a quip and a flourish worthy of what? Even when the occasion wasn't. I was drip-fed Shakespeare at Oxford, she told a party reporter at the launch of a book on Richard III by a Hollywood mega lawyer in the late 90s. Just sniffing fresh ink gets me high. Actually, that's true of me, too. Fresh ink. Anyway, what's more, she was exotic. She explored the seas and could pilot a helicopter or maybe a submarine. And this is not where I got the whole submarine thing. That was a whole separate article. And I may have it later on down, but we are running out of time. One acquaintance thought she could pilot a helicopter or maybe a submarine. One acquaintance thought a MacGyver of the gallows circuit. The couple times we talked, Tina Brown recalled she was always going on about intrepid voyages she took. Maxwell arrived in New York in the late 90s on the cusp of her 30th birthday. English-born and poshly educated, she was the favorite daughter of Robert Maxwell, the English media mogul, whose holdings included newspapers, notably the tabloid The Daily Mirror in London and the Macmillan Publishing House in the U.S. Ghislaine had founded a social club for women in London, and worked for another of her father's papers, and according to the New York Post, she became his emissary to American society when he bought the New York Daily News in 1991. But that same year, he was found dead by accident. The official inquest ruling, suicide or murder, opinions vary. In the Atlantic off the Canary Islands, he was last seen on the deck of his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine. Soon after, he was discovered to have plundered the pension funds of the Mirror to shore up his floundering empire. Two of his sons, Kevin and Ian, took over the family companies after his death. They stood trial for their alleged involvement in his fraud and were acquitted. Ghislaine has fine taste and excellent connections, and a whiff of disrepute had never seemed to dim her prospects. She was very popular at Oxford, absolutely famous, said Riley, who was at Cambridge a few years after. Excuse me. Oh, only had to pick up the cat be gone. Okay. She was absolutely famous, said Riley, who was at Cambridge a few years later. England's no different from anywhere else. You can have a dad everybody thinks is sleazy and rich, and that's sort of a plus socially. In a way, it made her more fascinating, not less. She was reported to have an income for life from family trust, but at £80,000, it would hardly be enough to sustain a high-flying lifestyle. Infamously, she came to America on the Concorde. The meet cute of Epstein and Maxwell in New York is unclear, and neither has historically gone into any great detail. Suffice it to say that they were romantically linked and then platonically linked. Ward wrote that Epstein told people of his former paramours move up, not down, to friend status. Among socials, she was known to have attached to Ted Waite, the ultra-wealthy co-founder of Gateway Computers. One pointed out Riley that around this time his first marriage dissolved. Waite was unstylish with a bald patch, a ponytail, and bad clothes. Afterward, he was sleek, shaved, and well-dressed. Waite did not return an email seeking comment. Part of the Maxwell appeal was savoir-faire. She had an upbringing and a taste and knew how to run a house and a boat and how to entertain. An acquaintance said more than one remembers her entertaining on Waite's yacht. Plan B, you can't buy that. You can't buy access either. Maxwell had both. Her passion was the oceans. For a woman everywhere about town, she is curiously silent in the press, except where conservation is concerned. In 2008, she hosted a cocktail party for the board of the nonprofit Oceana at her townhouse on East 65th Street. Hers? I'm not sure whose townhouse it was, but she entertained in it, McMillan said, and by 2012 she had launched the Terramar Project, a conservation nonprofit of her own, which, according to tax filings, she was president, but from which she drew no salary. She gave a TED Talk about its work and talked it up at the UN and in the press, which credited Terramar as her brainchild, but her association after years of bad press with Epstein seemed to have become a liability. While it remained active on social media of late, Maxwell's name has been curiously absent from its website. On Friday, a tweet from Terramar's verified account announced it will cease all operations, and its website and Instagram account were taken down. Now, we are almost done, aren't we? Yes. All right. From the New York World, too, she has vanished. I have not seen her in a zillion years, one acquaintance said. The trail of party photos dries up in 2016. Her 65th Street townhouse was sold for just over $15 million that year. The seller was given as 116 East 65th Street, LLC, which once claimed offices as that same old Epstein Mansion Avenue address. Where is she now? One social watcher guessed the islands, others think Europe. The way may have been paved. In 2012, she incorporated Almax Enterprise Limited with herself as secretary and director, the only director listed in its filings with Companies House, the British registrar. She is described as a resident of the UK with a correspondence address in Salisbury, not from Stonehenge. The address given for the company is in London. It is a non-trading company listed as dormant, and its net assets are £1. She was not, after all, bound to a particular city or country, and whether driven by design or dubious circumstances, she was used to jetting freely and fabulously around the globe. There was an independence about her, said someone who knew her. She kind of had to make her way around the world. She kind of had to make her way in the world. Relly, with the benefit of hindsight, saw a darker version. Ghislaine was funny and didn't take herself too seriously, he said, but she seemed like a woman who didn't have any real job, didn't have any real boyfriend, had lost her dad, a woman adrift who was clinging onto whatever she could find. That sounds a lot like Marilyn Monroe, to tell you the truth. She kind of was just drifting and trying to cling on to whoever would give her a sense of stability. And I think we're going to find out as time goes on that she had far more of a role in all this than we think. People thought she didn't have any job, that she wasn't attached anywhere. She didn't have a boyfriend. She didn't have, she was just jetting around to all these different homes and places. And I think it's interesting that she spent so much time on Epstein Island and was such a good friend of Jeffrey Epstein. He obviously trusted her explicitly, and trusted her to bring her the women that he desired, to keep his lust and his ego satisfied. So I think we are going to be finding out much, much more about Ghislaine. I really do. All right, now I know time is getting on. So I'm going to stop there. I may come back and do another short video because there's a lot more that I really do want to cover, and important things too. So yeah, I might come back. I don't know. Anyway, I'll get this uploaded and then I'll decide. All right. Stay safe, guys. Stay well, stay blessed, and keep seeking truth, because that's right, deception bites. Good night.